My daughter was only 11 years old when my own family left her outside in the cold like she meant nothing. That is the part people always react to first. Not the legal papers, not the family betrayal, not even the way everything ended. It is always that one image that stays with them. An 11-year-old girl sitting alone on the back steps in the dark, hugging her backpack to her chest, waiting for a door that should have opened the first time she knocked. I still see her that way sometimes. Small, silent, shivering. And the worst part is not that strangers did it. It was family. It was the people who smiled at her on birthdays, who let her call them grandma and aunt, who sat at the same dinner table and acted like love lived there. By the time I got to her that night, she had already stopped crying. And if you are a parent, you know how terrifying that is. Because when a child stops crying, sometimes it means she has already learned that nobody is coming fast enough. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It was late October, the kind of evening when the air turns sharp before winter fully arrives. A wet wind moved through the alley behind our family bookstore, carrying the smell of rain, old bricks, and the river a few streets away. I had just finished a long shift at the clinic. My feet were aching, my phone battery was nearly dead, and I remember thinking only one thing as I drove there. I'm late. Ava will be worried. Ava was my daughter. She was 11. She still had that fragile place between childhood and growing up, where she wanted to be brave even when she was scared, where she tried hard not to make things difficult for anyone, especially for me. When I turned into the alley and my headlights swept across the back of the building, I saw her. At first, I thought it was a pile of bags near the steps. Then she lifted her face. I slammed the brakes so hard the car jerked. She was sitting on the top step behind the bookstore, curled into herself, her denim jacket soaked through at the shoulders from mist and cold. Her knees were pulled up tight. Her backpack was clutched against her chest like it was the only thing in the world that still belonged to her. Her little face looked pale under the yellow security light. She tried to stand when she saw me, but her legs were stiff from sitting there too long. "Mom," she said. That one word nearly broke me. I was out of the car before the engine even settled. I ran to her, dropped to my knees, and touched her cheeks with both hands. Her skin was freezing. "Baby, how long have you been out here?" She looked at the ground before answering, and that hurt almost as much as the cold in her hands. "I don't know," she whispered. "A long time." I wrapped my arms around her, and she leaned into me with the kind of tiredness no child should ever have to carry. "My code didn't work," she said. "I thought I forgot it, so I tried again. Then I knocked. I knocked a lot." My stomach dropped. The back entrance to that building was not some random door. It was the back entrance to River's End Books, the bookstore where I had grown up, the place my father built with his own hands, the place where Ava had spent half her childhood drawing behind the counter and reading in the upstairs window seat. That door had always opened for us. Always. Until that night. I stood up and walked to the keypad. It was new, bright, clean. A scratch-free screen with a protective film still peeling at one corner. They had changed it recently. Deliberately. I entered the code anyway. Access denied. Once, twice, same result. Behind me, Ava said softly, "Grandma answered the speaker once." I turned around. "She spoke to you?" Ava nodded. I could see the hurt on her face before she even said the words. She said they were busy upstairs. Busy. My 11-year-old daughter had been left outside in the cold because they were busy. I knocked hard on the metal door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, and after a few seconds, the lock clicked. The door opened inward, and there stood my mother. She wore a soft cream sweater, gold earrings, lipstick carefully done, and in one hand she held a glass of white wine. Warm light spilled behind her. I could hear laughter from upstairs. A movie was playing in the event room, and the volume was high enough to shake softly through the floorboards. She looked comfortable. My daughter was shivering behind me. For 1 second, I just stared at her. I think some part of me still believed there had to be a misunderstanding, some terrible mistake, some explanation that would hurt but not destroy. Then she looked past me toward Ava and said, almost irritated, "You're causing a lot of noise back here." Not, "Is she okay?" Not, "Come inside." Not, "I'm sorry." Just irritation. I felt my voice change. It became low and flat in a way it only does when I am too angry to let myself fully feel it. "She's been sitting out here alone." My mother gave a small shrug. "She should have waited more quietly." For a second, I honestly couldn't speak. Ava had just turned 11 2 months earlier. She still slept with a small lamp on when thunderstorms rolled in. She still wrote little notes and tucked them into my purse before work. She still asked me to check her closet at night sometimes. Not because she believed monsters were there, but because she liked hearing me say, "All clear." And this child had been told to sit outside and wait quietly while the adults inside watched a movie. I stepped forward. "Why doesn't our code work?" Before my mother could answer, my sister Melanie came into the hall. She leaned against the wall with her arms folded, phone in hand, expression already cold. "Because things had to change," she said. I looked at her. Melanie had always been good at looking polished while saying cruel things. Even as children, she knew how to make hurt sound reasonable, how to speak in a tone so calm that anyone listening from outside would think she must be the sensible one. "What does that mean?" I asked. My mother lifted her chin, that old familiar motion she used whenever she had made up her mind and expected everyone else to fall into line. "It means," she said, "we discussed the living arrangement and decided this can't continue." The air seemed to stop moving. Ava stood behind me, silent. My mother took a small sip of wine and said the sentence I will remember for the rest of my life. "We agreed this isn't your place anymore." Something in Ava made a tiny sound behind me. Not a cry, not even a word. Just the sound a heart makes when it realizes it is not safe where it thought it was loved. I turned my head enough to look at her. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. That was the moment something changed inside me forever. Not because they wanted me gone, not because they had chosen Melanie over me again, but because my daughter was standing there, 11 years old, cold and humiliated, learning what people are capable of when kindness is no longer convenient. And she was watching me, watching to see what a mother does when the people who should protect her child are the ones causing the harm. I did not scream. I did not beg. I did not remind my mother of the years I spent helping my father run that bookstore while Melanie came and went only when it suited her. I did not list the inventory I had organized, the bills I had paid, the school reading programs I had run, the evenings Ava had spent quietly doing homework in the upstairs apartment while I closed up shop. I simply looked at my mother and said, "Okay." That one word unsettled all of them. Melanie blinked. My mother frowned as if she had prepared herself for a fight and now didn't know where to place all the hardness she had gathered. I took Ava's hand. Her fingers were icy in mine. "Come on, sweetheart," I said. We walked away. I did not look back. In the car, she stayed quiet for most of the drive. The heater blew warm air, but it took time for the shaking to leave her body. I kept one hand on the wheel and one hand over hers whenever I could. Finally, in a voice so small it nearly disappeared between us, she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I pulled the car over so fast I barely remember choosing to. I turned to her. "No." Tears burned my eyes instantly. No, baby, no. You did absolutely nothing wrong. She nodded, but children always know when the answer they need is bigger than words. I tried not to bother them, she said. I sat really still after Grandma told me they were busy. That was the sentence that broke me. Not outside, not in front of them. There, in the car, with my 11-year-old daughter apologizing for existing too loudly while she was being shut out of her own home. I leaned over the console and held her while she cried into my shoulder, finally letting out the tears she had been swallowing for hours. I cried too, quietly, the way mothers do when they know they have to stay steady even while their heart is splitting open. That night, we stayed with my friend Nora. Nora worked with me at the clinic, and when she opened the door and saw Ava's face, she didn't ask questions right away. She brought blankets, heated soup, put socks in the dryer so they'd be warm when Ava changed. Then she set up the pull-out couch and touched my arm gently. You can tell me later, she said. Right now, just let her feel safe. Ava fell asleep with my old cardigan wrapped around her and her backpack still under one hand. I sat on the floor beside the couch and watched her sleep. Every now and then she twitched a little, like even in dreams she was still cold. Around 2 a.m, she murmured in her sleep, "Mom, code doesn't work." I had to press my fist against my mouth to keep from making a sound. The next morning, after Ava woke up and tried to act normal in the heartbreaking way children do, I stepped into Nora's kitchen and called my father's attorney. His name was James Holloway. A week earlier, he had left me a voicemail asking me to come by when I had time. He said my father had left documents to be released only if certain circumstances arose. I had put it off. Life was busy. I thought it was paperwork. I thought there would be time. Now I knew better. I met James that afternoon in his office above a pharmacy downtown. He was an older man, gentle-faced, precise, the kind of person who never wasted words. When I told him what happened, he went very still. Then he opened a drawer and removed a thick, sealed envelope. "Your father hoped I would never need to hand this to you," he said. "But he also believed that if the day came, you would already have waited too long out of love." My throat tightened. Inside the envelope was a revised trust and a letter from my father. My father, Samuel Reed, had owned River's End Books. Everyone assumed it would pass naturally to my mother after his death. That is what Melanie assumed. That is what my mother assumed. But my father knew our family better than any of us wanted to admit. More than a year before he died, while he was still fully lucid, he had restructured ownership of the bookstore and the building. The trust named me as primary managing beneficiary, and Ava as protected co-beneficiary. My mother had limited rights to live there and help with operations, only so long as she did not exclude, endanger, or displace either of us. If she did, the violation would trigger immediate transfer enforcement. I read the words once, then again. Then I opened my father's letter. His handwriting had grown shaky near the end of his life, but his heart was clear in every line. He wrote that he had watched me make myself smaller for years just to keep peace in the family. He wrote that kindness was one of my strengths, but only if I remembered that kindness without boundaries becomes permission. He wrote that he loved my mother for many things, but he did not trust grief, pride, or favoritism to leave the bookstore untouched after he was gone. Then he wrote about Ava. He said she had brought him more peace in his last year than she would ever understand. That the sound of her reading in the afternoons made the bookstore feel alive, even when his body was failing him. That any home built around love should belong, in part, to a child like her. My vision blurred so badly I had to stop reading. James let me sit with it for a while before speaking again. "There is also camera evidence," he said quietly.
Your father had exterior security installed during the last renovations. The footage confirms your daughter arrived shortly after 5. You arrived after 8.
3 hours. 3 full hours. Not a misunderstanding. Not a few minutes. Not an exaggeration. Proof. I looked up at James. What happens now? He folded his hands.
That depends on you. But legally, the clause has been triggered.
I thought about Ava asking me if she had done something wrong. I thought about her sitting still because she had been told not to make noise. I thought about my father, who had seen this possibility coming long before I had the courage to admit it. And for the first time in a very long time, my calm did not come from fear. It came from clarity. For my daughter, I said, I'm not waiting anymore. For the next 3 days, I said nothing to my mother or Melanie. My mother texted once, "If you're done making this dramatic, come get the rest of your things." Not, "How is Ava?" Not, "I'm sorry." Just irritation dressed as authority. I did not reply. Instead, I bought Ava new pajamas because I had forgotten hers in the rush to leave. I brushed her hair one night while she sat cross-legged on Nora's couch. I signed the permission slip she had left in her backpack for a school museum trip. I packed her lunch. I helped her study spelling words. And in every ordinary little thing, I could feel what mattered most becoming sharper and simpler. A child should never have to beg for belonging. On the 3rd day, I sat with Ava and told her the truth in the gentlest words I could find. Grandpa made sure we would always have a place, I said. She looked at me carefully. Even if people were mean? Yes, I said. Did he know they might be? I swallowed hard. I think he hoped they wouldn't be. But yes, sweetheart, I think he knew they could be. Ava nodded slowly. Then she asked, "Are you scared?" I smiled a little, even with tears in my eyes. "Yes," I said honestly, "but I'm more scared of teaching you that this is something we should accept." That seemed to settle somewhere deep inside her. The next morning, I returned to the bookstore with James beside me. The bell over the front door rang when we stepped in. My mother was behind the counter. Melanie was arranging a display table near the window. Both looked up. Both froze. James introduced himself formally, though they already knew exactly who he was. Then he placed the documents on the counter. My mother's expression changed line by line as she read. First, annoyance, then disbelief, then a kind of pale shock I had never seen on her face before. Melanie read over her shoulder, and all her confidence drained away so fast it almost looked unreal. "This can't be right," she said. "Over one incident?" I looked at her. It was never one incident. And it wasn't. It was every small cruelty before that. Every time Ava was treated as less welcome. Every time I was expected to carry responsibility while being denied respect. Every time silence was mistaken for weakness. My mother looked at me with real fear now. "You would do this to me?" I heard my own answer before I fully felt it. "No," I said softly. "You did this to yourself when you left an 11-year-old child outside and called it a decision." No one had anything to say after that, because there are some truths too ugly to decorate. The 30 days that followed were quieter than I expected. My mother called twice. The first message was full of humiliation, not remorse. The second tried harder, but even then I could hear that she was grieving consequence more than the pain she caused. Melanie sent a long text about family, misunderstanding, and how nobody meant for things to go that far. But pain still counts, even when the cruel call it unintentional, especially to a child. I never answered. A month later, Ava and I walked back into the bookstore for good. This time, the key worked. This time, the door opened on the first try. Ava stood there for a second, holding the handle, almost like she needed proof. Then she looked up at me. "Can we really stay?" I knelt in front of her and touched her face the way I had that terrible night in the alley. "Yes," I said, "we can really stay." She threw her arms around my neck so hard I almost lost my balance. I held her and closed my eyes. Some people think justice is loud. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes justice is just a little girl no longer flinching at a locked door. We put the apartment back together slowly. Her books went back on the shelf by the bed. My father's reading lamp returned to the window corner. I found his old chair in storage and had it cleaned. Ava placed one of his framed photographs on the hallway table herself, then stepped back and adjusted it until it sat straight. "There," she said quietly. "Now it feels like him again." That night, after the boxes were mostly unpacked and the silence of the apartment finally felt peaceful instead of empty, Ava climbed into bed and looked at me. "Do you think Grandma is sorry?" Children ask the questions adults spend years avoiding. I sat on the edge of her bed and tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "Maybe one day," I said, "but whether she is or not doesn't change the truth." "What truth?" "That you never deserved what happened to you." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded and lay down. For the first time since that night, she fell asleep without clutching her backpack. I sat beside her a while longer, listening to her breathing, listening to the soft creak of a home that finally felt ours in the way that mattered most. Not because of paperwork, not because of keys, but because nobody could make my daughter feel unwanted there again. My father understood something I learned too late. Love does not require you to stay where your child is being harmed. Peace is not peace if it asks your daughter to sit outside in the cold while others stay warm inside. And quiet women are not weak women. Sometimes the strongest thing a mother can do is say very little, protect her child, and let the truth arrive in its own time. My mother thought I would break at that door. She thought if she spoke firmly enough, if she acted certain enough, I would shrink the way I always had. What she did not understand was this: a woman may endure a great deal for herself, but once her child is the one shivering outside, endurance ends. And that night, mine did too.